When the fight between Zheng and the two strongest members of Team Africa were going on in the flagship, Xian, 0, and Lan took the shuttle to the starship Team Africa was originally in. Messages of soldiers dying in massive numbers were sent out from the ship. Cause of death unknown. The large part of the starship was classified as restricted zones. Xian said to the other two. 80% chance due to magical items or abilities because scientific weapons will likely damage themselves first. Even if they have defensive items, what about Gondo? We still haven't received notification of his death, so he should be alive in this starship. Lan. Lan seemed her mind was somewhere else. She was using the psyche scan ability. After Xian's shout, Lan was confused for a moment then said. Yes. A place within this ship is masked. Xian shook his head. 0, have we been notified of killing their members yet? 0 shook his head. No, only the destruction of 2 starships. Is that so? That means Zheng really wants to save Gondo. Xian frowned and adjusted his glasses. Lan and 0 made an eye contact. Lan asked, what do you mean? Why does the lack of notification mean he really wants to save Gondo? It shouldn't be strange that he wants to do so. Xian said. If the other team quickly received notification of member deaths, once, twice, 3 times, what would those who are still alive think? They could only run and feel despair. We won't allow them to surrender. And they know it. The most likely thing they will do is kill the hostage. That hostage is likely Gondo. Of course, Zheng has been through so many battles. He's a qualified warrior. He knows what's important. When he learned of the person with a self-created ability, he might want to observe it. Lan, keep Kappa, Wangxia, and Zheng connected. Contact them immediately if something happens. 0, protect Lan and give me fire support. I am the main force of this fight. 0 and Lan nodded. They looked out the window of the shuttle. 8 starships were battling each other far away. The stray missiles hit the ships nearby. More and more starships were forced to join this chaotic battle. Since the high-ranking officers were killed by Hoffer and Xian disappeared from his position, the commanding system of the fleet was in a disorder. Both sides believed they were right, but the lack of a conclusion ignited gunfights even within the starships. When Xian entered the starship, the majority of troopers were in a panic state. Most shuttles and transporting ships were used to get away, with many more troopers waiting by the shuttle's area. Once Xian's group got off the shuttle, a dozen troopers swarmed up. Everyone wanted to get in first that they didn't even take a look at the 3 who just got off. Xian and 0 knocked them away without mercy. The rest of the troopers immediately raised their guns instinctively. When the veterans recognized the 3 of them, they yelled at the newcomers then saluted at Xian. What happened? Have you forgotten you are a trooper? All squad leaders and sergeants listen. Shoot on spot anyone who doesn't follow orders. Now, you tell me what happened here. Xian said these words then pointed at a sergeant. The sergeant was obviously one of the veterans from Klendathu. He gave a salutation and said. Sir. A lot of large bees appeared inside the ship, about 2 to 3 times larger than normal bees. Troopers that get stung would feel hot then faint. Multiple stings at the same time would kill them with poison. Our weapons have no effect on these bees. The high-ranking officers in this ship are parasitized by bugs given these strange bees. Bees. Xian and the other 2 frowned. They recognized what these bees represent, a magic ability. Furthermore, this was a large AoE ability. Its ranking should be rather high. Lan finally saw the light and said. No wonder. I saw tiny amounts of Psyche Force flying around during the scan. I thought their Psyche Force user was trying to misdirect me. So those are the bees. The bees don't seem to have a physical body, so they are formed by the ability. Psyche Force bees. Truly marvelous. If they are formed by Psyche Force, Xian said calmly. Try to attack them with Psyche Whip. If I remember correctly, Psyche Whip specializes against other Psyche Force users. Lan nodded. She closed his eyes and walked forward. Xian said to the sergeant. Guard this area and send some troopers to search for survivors within the ship, but don't get close to the center where the bees are. We will take care of them. Xian followed Lan to the center of the ship. Psyche Whip was extremely effective against these bees of 2 thumbs big. They were formed by pure Psyche Force and looked translucent during their attacks. The numbers were huge. They wouldn't have been able to get near the center area to Team Africa without Psyche Whip. As they were heading forward, Lan frowned and said to Xian. Their Psyche Force user contacted me. They said they want to get in contact with someone who can make decisions. But Zheng is still fighting. I am afraid of disturbing him. Let me connect her mind with yours. Xian snapped his fingers and said to 0. Kill anyone who attempts to come close before our negotiation is over, including troopers. Lan, tell Kappa and Wangxia to command their starships to aim at this ship, but not at any critical spots. I will determine the time of fire. Lan and Kappa nodded. Xian closed his eyes to meet the other mind. It was a young woman's voice. Hello, are you a member of high position in Team China? I am a member of Team Africa. The person in charge in our team is dead. Our leader is fighting with your leader. So I will be the one conducting this negotiation. Negotiation? What a joke. Xian said with a sneer. Don't kid me, unless you consider surrender a negotiation. Don't act like you have the upper hand with a hostage. We don't have rune word stones, but our score is at +1 point. 1 or 2 deaths won't matter much. Do you want to test the truth of my words? The girl didn't get angered by his words but sighed instead. I think you are right. Yes, we lost. This is a surrender instead of negotiation. We are willing to surrender, but I want you to understand that we aren't powerless. It's just that the person who can gather your powers together is dead. Xian interrupted her. You said the person in charge is dead. Your leader is still fighting. We only killed one person in the beginning. Which means no other people from your team died in our hands since the battle. There should be someone who make plans for your team. Is he dead? She sighed. Yes. He's dead. Otherwise, his wisdom can lead us on. Even if we are to die, we won't give you such an easy victory. Do you accept our request? We hand you back the hostage, one unlocked member and one not unlocked as reparation. You will let the rest of us go in exchange. We will take care of these two members. You don't have to worry about any schemes. Impossible. Xian said with a cold smile. I will repeat this once more. Don't kid me. I won't worry about the hostage getting killed. I don't even care about the points and rewards from the few of you. Do you think I will accept any threats? He contacted Kappa and Wang Xia through Soul Link. 10 seconds later, the whole starship was trembling violently. This is your last warning. Surrender unconditionally within 5 minutes or we will destroy the ship along with you and the hostage. I am not joking. Xian adjusted his glasses and said apathetically. A short period of pause from the girl, then she said with anger, what do you mean by that? That's pushing too far. Do you think I have no other abilities aside from the bees? Do you think we have no members with strong abilities? Even though I admitted you are the strongest team, but don't you think you can kill us all? Even if you do kill all of us, it won't be without costs. Xian said apathetically, no need for coming out intact, nor do we wish to get that little amount of points and rewards from you. We just need to get rid of the danger. Have you forgotten there's another still weaker team? We will obtain the points and rewards from them. 4 minutes 30 seconds left. Make your choice. The girl replied fiercely, are you really going to drive us into desperation? Do you want us to kill your comrade? Are 2,000 and perhaps even more points not important to you? If so, I will kill this person right now. Xian gave a cold smile and was about to reply when Zero stepped in front of him. This not so emotional man said as he stared at Xian, Xian, let Gondo live. There's no benefit to you for killing him. I think Zheng also wishes to save Gondo. What you are doing is pushing him toward death. Let him go. I have an understanding of what happened before. This isn't fair to him. Xian looked back at Zero quietly. The sniper was usually a man of few words, but he said so much for Gondo. The fact was Xian couldn't ignore Zero's words just like he couldn't ignore Zheng. He gave a nod then said through his mind. How many people do you have by your side? Are the sacrificial pieces within these people? What are your abilities? How are they in combat? Answer me or I will leave this starship in 4 minutes. The responsibility doesn't lie within me by that time. The last sentence was directed at Zero. The girl paused for a while then muttered, there are 2 people beside me. 3 people here including me. 2 on the flagship fighting your leader. 1 died in one of the information network starships. We can hand one of us here to you. My abilities are witchcraft. I can convert Psyche Force into bees to attack. Psyche Force users are hard counters to these bees. Aside from this, I can sacrifice myself to curse one person. I don't think this person can make it back to God's dimension. Finally, we have our Psyche Force user. So we don't possess much offensive abilities. As long as you can let us go, I am not an idiot and won't use the curse that easily. Xian nodded, we will leave this for later. Now tell me, how did the person you captured told you about our team members' names and locations? What day did he say these? How did he say these? What did you ask him? The girl paused for a bit then told him about how they interrogated Gondo and tempted him after capturing. Then said it wasn't until this morning that Gondo released the names of all Teach China's members aside from the Psyche Force user. And Nia's questioning and his answers. She said these in a rush so the details were missing but the general events were there. Is that so? Interesting. Something interesting actually happened. He exceeded my expectation. Xian adjusted his glasses, good. I consent to your surrender. There are 2 points you have to take note of. 1. We will protect your Psyche Force user. We will kill your Psyche Force user if you do anything that harms Team China. 2. The rest of your team must join us in the battle against Team South America. Your chances of living might also be low at that time. Give me an answer. She was silent for 2 minutes before replying with defeated tone, fine. I agree to your requests. But I want to ask, how will you guarantee our safety? Killing us yields a large amount of points and rewards. Can you so easily let go of this temptation? Unless you give us a way to live, we would rather fight until the last moment. Xian nodded, this isn't a problem. We will leave this starship once you agree to surrender. The 2 people that we are going to kill and 1 more person from the flagship will come to this starship. I will give you 24 hours to release Gondo. Your Psyche Force user will also come out with him. If 24 hours passes, I will order all the starships to fire. So don't attempt to run or resist. To let you know the truth, you are in a hopeless situation. You may be able to drag one of us to hell, but you can also take the risk and trust me in order to give Team Africa a chance to live on. It's your choice. The conversation with Xian had exhausted her physically and mentally. She looked toward the little girl by her side and a black man lying on the ground unconscious. Then to Gondo, who was sitting on the side casually but was actually extremely anxious within. She muttered to the girl, "Snow. I am sorry. I have to do this. Rose told me about the mummy. As long as the main members of our team can live, as long as we can live until we enter the mummy, we will be able to revive Neos. Forgive me, Snow. I can't let him die here." Snow smiled and held her hand. "Aya, don't worry. I also don't want Neos to die. I will be obedient and won't resist." Aya held her in the arms and cried. Gondo let out a deep sigh of relief. He immediately relaxed himself and slid onto the floor. "Xian, Zero and Lan back from the way they came?" Zero suddenly asked. "Xian, tell me the whole event. I still don't understand it. I know you planned to kill Gondo, but why did you let him go in the end? Was it because he didn't reveal all of our names? This isn't like you." Xian said calmly, "I did indeed plan to kill him. He doubted the team's orders in Klentathu. As an uncertainty in the team, he possesses more danger than usefulness. I can't accept this point, so killing him was a good choice. It was decided to use him as the bait since the formation of the plan. In my initial estimate, he had a 50% chance of dying during these days. But he didn't die. This was my first test, that whether he is scared of death enough to reveal us. If he did, they would have certainly killed him. It's such troublesome to avoid letting Zhen know I want to kill him, at least not until his death. Otherwise, there's a 90% chance of him stopping the plan." Gondo also had his use as a bait to confuse the other team's strategist. The plan proceeded smoothly. He saw the hieroglyphs I put up. It was a gamble with only 50% chance, but Gondo was lucky enough. My second test is on his ability. If the other team had a strategist who made such a plan, he would definitely suspect the reason Gondo revealed everyone's names except the Psyche Force user so painlessly. How should Gondo have reacted? Tell him about the hieroglyphs? Lie? Or betray us? This is a trap that I set. It didn't matter that they know the hieroglyph message when things had already got to that point. They could only continue on with their plan unless they planned to make peace with us. The real goal was to test Gondo, whether he could survive, how he survives, and whether his value surpasses the uncertainty he brings. Zheng said that Gondo has an extremely strong desire to live. This is similar to him. Then let me see this desire, whether this desire can outshine the most dangerous situation. If he succeeds, I can set up scenarios to give him a sense of belonging to the team. A person with great potential is worth me making these plans. Based on my tests and the information I have, he has the desire to live, strong ability and intelligence, and enough luck. He passed my test. He's now a member of Team China. In contrast to the negotiation happening between Xian and Team Africa, the fight was still going on in the flagship. Both sides used their self-created abilities. Their combat prowess went from normal humans to superhumans. The appearance of the mithril rings changed Zheng's explosion dramatically. The time limit was extended by a lot and he could save part of his energies to use destruction in emergencies. As soon as he found out that the enemy's self-created ability was similar to his explosion, he used his own. Side effects and after effects aside, Berserker was obviously a near-flawless ability in terms of its strength. Richard's physical stats were several times lower than Zheng, but the ability pushed his combat power to slightly above Zheng in explosion. Richard had entered the second stage of the unlock mode. Not only strength and speed but his reaction and instinctive techniques were on par with Zheng's second stage. Zheng's eyes were defocused as he slashed at Richard with Tiger's Soul. This was his only advantage in the current situation. His weapon was much better. The light blade created from channeling chi in Tiger's Soul almost got Richard, but he dodged it by a hair each time. However, the power of the light blade couldn't be dodged so simply. After several times, wounds had accumulated on his body. Half his palm and 2 fingers were cut off. Drops of blood splattered all over the floor. What confused Zheng was Richard seemed to be getting stronger the more he got wounded. His strength and speed were growing with the injuries. His movements were extremely agile and refined. He left several wounds on Zheng's body with the double blade axe. In under a minute of fighting, both their bodies were covered in wounds. Zheng circulated his blood energy for a second. The ice clinging to his body and Tiger's Soul melted. He then leaped forward and slashed horizontally at Richard. The light blade extended to almost 10 meters. The corridor would be cut open along with Richard's body if it hits. The light blade's power was unstoppable after all. They fought out of the conference room. Their strengths and speed during their abilities were so massive that they broke several alloy walls in just 10 seconds. They fought to the middle of the corridor and deformed the path on the way. Their footprints were embedded all over the floor. Richard was decisive when he saw the slash coming. He hacked the axe into the wall, then used it as support to flip himself over right before the light blade hit. As soon as he dodged the attack, he stepped heavily and charged forward. He raised his axe and aimed at Zheng's head. Zheng was also slightly losing his mind at this point. He pulled Tiger's Soul back to Black Axe. Clank. They both got knocked back 10 meters and hit the walls. Both coughed out a mouthful of blood. Richard got back up faster as if he wasn't hurt. His hands held on the edge of the pit to get out. He gave a shout, used the wall behind to leap at Zheng. Zheng still remembered Xian's advice that his strength surpassed the rest of the team too much, that he should try to capture the enemies alive if possible. This was why he held back in the fight. Another reason was that he worried about Gondo. If Team Africa were notified of too many deaths, the remaining members might panic. There was no guarantee of anything, so he tried not to kill the enemies. These thoughts crossed his mind in an instant. He saw Richard closing in. He had no choice but to block with Tiger's Soul. When the sword met the axe, he gave a kick at the side of Tiger's Soul. The force of impact and his kick knocked Richard back several meters. He wouldn't let go of such a great opportunity. He activated his movement technique and charged up to Richard before he could turn the axe around. Zheng was much more adept at with punches and kicks than big weapons. He used a large variety of weapons before he exchanged Tiger's Soul, and he mostly used his fists. When Richard threw a punch at him, he went at it with his own punch. But he didn't use much force. As the two fists were going to collide, Zheng's other arm moved up from beneath. He changed his fist to a claw and grabbed Richard's arm. The elbow of his other arm hit a joint on Richard's arm. Joints were always the weakest part, no matter how strong one's body was. Explosion also increased his strength several folds, so this elbow snapped Richard's arm in the opposite direction. But before Zheng could follow up, Richard's knee struck his chest and sent him back several meters. Both sides were injured in this exchange. Zheng's injury was much lighter in comparison. The injury on the joint had disabled Richard's arm. Zheng just needed to be careful from now on. The fight was basically decided. Richard couldn't last 10 more seconds. Before Zheng's next attack, he saw Richard gave a shout. He grabbed his arm and twisted it back to its normal position with force. The abnormal twist and bulging on the muscles were signs that the muscles were injured in addition to the bones. Richard continued to act as though he was wounded despite the pain that would have knocked out any normal person. He breathed more intensely. The redness in his eyes grew to a deeper color. His strength and speed also increased further. Zheng rolled to the side and dodged an axe. The axe struck a 1-meter pit on the floor at where he was standing. Richard's strength had completely surpassed his with the wounds. His breathing was getting heavier and heavier. Blood slowly flowed out from his eyes and nose. Zheng finally decided to use destruction. Richard was going to become a dead man in any second. Zheng wanted to test his luck to see if he could knock Richard out. If would capture Ricard if he succeeds, or kill him if he fails instead of not getting anything. Then, a man enveloped in electricity came out from the corner laughing before Zheng could activate destruction. His hair was spiked up and he left a burn trail on the floor that he walked past. He seemed like an incarnation of lightning. The Caucasian laughed out. Team China's leader, CK off. Zheng couldn't afford to waste any time. He raised Tiger's Soul and slashed across. Hoffer's legs separated from his body before he knew it and he fell to the floor. A fist landed on his face before he could utter a sound. He was knocked out at once. Zheng turned around to see an axe hacking across. He immediately rolled to the side and without hesitation, his blood energy and chi collided violently. Destruction. That's basically it. I used destruction and fortunately didn't kill him. Though the flagship was completely ruined. Zheng said in front of a group and said. Among this group were the other 6 members of Team China and 5 members from Team Africa. A Caucasian and a black man were in terrible shapes. The Caucasian lay on the floor without any limbs. The black man's body was covered in numerous bumps. There was another person submerged in liquid behind him. The middle-aged man looked equally terrible. There were cuts all over his body. It seemed as though he just came out from a slaughterhouse. Zheng was in a much better shape in contrast. He was also wounded all over when he met with the others and there were ice forming over his wounds. But before long, the wounds began to regenerate. Such a strong body surprised and terrified the 2 members of Team Africa who were still conscious. Xian told Zheng his decision when they met. Zheng had no objection to it since Team Africa's strength was more important than some points and rewards at this point. He couldn't accept it if any member dies during the battle against Team South America because of his greed. None of them had another chance to revive. It was simply that. That was why they immediately gave Richard treatment. The Caucasian and black man were excluded. Then everyone sat down quietly and began to discuss the upcoming attack from the bugs. During the fight within the fleet, Kampa and Wang Xia took their opportunities and destroyed 3 starships. This gave everyone in Team China 3000 points. The starships also scanned a large quantity of unknown objects closing in the fleet from 3 directions. Their numbers were at least 5 times the number of starships. They hadn't begun their attack but the numbers along were scary enough. The chaotic fight quickly stopped and the starships moved into a formation around the flagship. Xian adjusted his glasses and said calmly. We will leave the events concerning the flagship for later. The core of this starship wasn't damaged too much. Now Team Africa, you had surrendered. Following our agreement, we will kill these 2 people and she will stay within our protection. The 2 of you must listen to our arrangements until the end of the movie. Any objections? Aya shook her head. No problem. We will follow your arrangements. How are you going to deal with the space bugs? Our powers have minimal effect in a space battle. Any explosion can wipe us out. Do you have the confidence for such a battle? Xian replied calmly. You don't have to worry about this. Have you seen the map of the distribution of the bugs? Why do they surround 3 directions and leaving one open? Because they are giving us a hope of escaping. The bugs aren't going to win against the massive metallic weapons that are starships with merely 5 times the numbers. They have to use other methods. The best one is to make us feel defeated without fighting. When there's a hope of escaping, people wouldn't be as inclined to fight. What's interesting is the opening they left leads to Planet P. Zheng was recovering his chi during this time, so he didn't see the distribution map and other information. He asked, "What does that mean? You want to say that the bugs want to force us to land on planet P and swarm us? We aren't idiots. Why would we land the starships and face the sea of bugs?" Xian waved his hand. "This is where they are smart. I am certain there's a large number of space bugs waiting outside planet P. Once we head their way, the space bugs would surround the fleet. The fleet would then be caught in a difficult fight. The destruction of starships means death, while landing isn't necessarily so. How would you choose? Based on current information, there isn't a sea of bugs on planet P. In fact, the Federation has several fortresses on the planet. Do you still feel it's better to land or stay in space?" Zheng picked up the photos of the space bugs. They were centipede-like, 20 meters long, no legs, and had a crystallized exoskeleton. It was such evolution that enabled them to adapt to the terrible environment of space. Their bulky bodies and thick crystallized exoskeletons meant that they must move extremely slow on ground with the effect of gravity. They were probably only suited for space. Aside from these centipede bugs was a massive ball of flesh in the back. Its size almost approached that of a small satellite. Its exoskeleton was also crystallized, giving it a bronze color. There were also tubes extended out from its exoskeleton. The photos showed plasma coming out from the tubes. The plasma was what gave it the force to move. These bugs are frightening. They can evolve to such a state with just their bodies. Is God showing us through this movie the two extremes of evolution of the body and intelligence? Gondo moved over to Zheng and looked at the photos. Then he laughed out. Gondo returned to his cheerful personality after he was rescued. He didn't mention a word about his capture, as if that experience was merely a joke. Xian nodded. Quite possible. These space bugs have completely abandoned technology. They displayed evolution of the body. The structure of their society is similar to that of bees and ants. A single mind holds command and the others form the parts of the body. The fact is, humans are fighting against the same organism. We can call this organism as a super life. The bug's evolution has way surpassed the human's technological evolution in this era. This may be a hint from God of what's more important between the body and technology. Aya sighed as she watched. She was convinced of Xian's intelligence. This was the strategist that defeated Neos. She thought over the battle of wits afterward, and with the addition of some details within Xian's words, she finally knew that Neos' loss wasn't unwarranted. Team China stayed calm in the team battle. Neos lost in the beginning. He wanted to annihilate Team China because he had to challenge the incongruity of his team at the same time. While Team China functioned in unity around Zheng with Xian as support and the other members were forces in combat. Such a team was much stronger than Team Africa. Zheng and Xian came to a conclusion. It was not possible to destroy the massive ball with the fleet. They also couldn't participate in a space battle. In the end, they decided to let the fleet head toward planet P. They had to contact the Federation and the fortresses on the planet in order to obtain the necessary support as soon as they land. The fact is, we still have big advantages after landing. 1. The space bugs wouldn't be able to move freely under gravity. So the starships don't have to worry about their attacks. The starships are basically metallic fortresses. As long as we don't get separated after landing, we can enter a formation that allows the starships to support each other. There are also tens of thousands of troopers we can command. Nothing worth worrying about in this battle. The only thing is the true mission that God is going to reveal soon. Judging from the time it takes to head to planet P then land, we will still need to stay there for 24 to 48 hours. God is definitely going to announce a mission to make us encounter Team South America. Are you ready? Xian looked at Zheng. Zheng nodded and stood up. Then let's order the fleet to start heading toward planet P. If we come to become enemies, it probably shouldn't matter much to annihilate Team South America. Whether or not they could annihilate Team South America was still in question. However, the space bugs surrounding the fleet increased in numbers once again that same afternoon. An endless supply of space bugs kept coming out from the massive ball of flesh. These bugs also propel themselves with plasma from their butts. Their shape gave them decent speed and flexibility. The lack of any legs made them seem like earthworms floating in space. People on the fleet started feeling anxious with the increase in space bugs. There was still a big gap between the two parties, but this gap wasn't actually too far in space. Space battles were different in that an individual's power was insignificant aside from his strategic contributions. Everyone had to place their fate on an uncertain future, which would give them a powerless feeling. The highest-ranking officers remaining within the fleet were Zheng and his other 3 teammates since the massacre by Team Africa. Of course, even though Zheng was the one in command, it was Xian who gave the actual orders. He was the only one with the ability to manage the situation and coordinate the fleet of about 100 starships. This is actually a chance. I don't know what methods the bugs use to disrupt signal around this area. After the initial signal of riot and ambush, our signals haven't been able to go back to Earth. This fleet is our weapon now. Xian gave a cold smile with a hint of fanaticism which sent chills to everyone. Wait. Zheng immediately said. You wouldn't be planning something scary? No, I won't allow you risk everyone's life. I admit your intelligence and scheming ability are strong, but you seem to never leave yourself with a way to retreat. It was taking crazy risks every time. Same thing happened in the battle against Team Africa. If we lost, we would have been wiped or controlled. And winning did the same to their team. I don't like this gambler style. Xian didn't get mad. He replied calmly. If the rate of success goes above 50%, it wouldn't be a gamble. Nothing is absolutely safe in this world or insurance companies wouldn't have existed. As long as profit and the rate of success are maximized, it will be worth doing. Zheng sighed. I understand what you mean. Reaching for the highest profit while minimizing the risk and risk equals reward. I understand, but you want to attack that ball of flesh with the fleet. This idea is simply outrageous. Even if the ball of flesh is a rank S bonus mission, I won't allow you to do it with everyone's safety. Absolutely impossible. Zheng unintentionally noticed the bug distribution maps laid out by Xian's table. There was focus on the distribution around the ball of flesh. Xian even wrote out the details of the distance between them, the weapons within the fleet, the success rate of the plan, the speed of both sides, and possible formations both sides would use. Xian nodded seriously. Yes. I have calculated it carefully. If we forced an attack on the ball, there's only a 20% chance of success. However, success likely means an A or A reward. I was careless to not think of this possibility. If Gondo has a Freedom or RX-78, he would be a decisive factor in the battle. So God even anticipated space battles and provides the weapons. The rest of the group looked at each other. Zheng then patted Xian's shoulder. I think your plan is more ridiculous than God's arrangements in comparison. I absolutely won't agree to such a plan. Come up with another one immediately. Xian adjusted his glasses as he frowned. A few seconds later, he said. Then we will head toward Planet P before the bugs attack. We still have 4 days before going back to God's dimension. If my speculation is right, the mission is probably he looked toward a map of Planet P that displayed the location of the human fortresses. Ignore the smaller points, there were 7 such places that could supply them with 50,000 troopers in total. These 7 places were concentrated in one continent and they were not far away from each other. Adding up the troopers in the fleet with those in the large fortresses, they would have over 150,000 troopers. The fleet followed Xian's order to head toward Planet P in the end. 10 smaller starships were left behind to delay the bugs. The rest of the fleet moved at full speed. This is the model of their team. A charismatic leader who can influence and control the whole team. A strategist who's only responsible for the planning while the leader decides on the general direction. However, the leader does not interfere with the strategist or other members. Richard, do you think this model is much better than the one we had? Aya said to the man next to her. Xian didn't interfere with Team Africa since their surrender. The Caucasian and black man were killed by Lan and Wang Xia. This was the conclusion after a discussion. The most important Psyche Force user needed more enhancements. The points and rank reward could exchange for a Psyche Force ability. The next priority were AoE explosive weapons or ability, which they favored Wang Xia for this. The killing could be omitted. Aside from killing the 2 members, they also obtained 2 rune word stones expectedly. The quest items that could prevent the user from being erased from point deficiency. They received notification as soon as they got their hands on the stones. These stones were all unused and still had 3 uses left. Zheng kept the stones for safekeeping per their rules. No one displayed any discontent, even Gondo. Aya and Richard saw this scene. Richard sighed. Yes. A leader like this brings the team together. Even if there were conflicts among the members, Team China will fight until the last moment together as long as the leader is there. While our leader was. They grinded their teeth as they thought of that Caucasian leader, then sighed when they thought of Neos. He was only slightly below Xian and he died from his own anger. His intolerance and overconfidence were the biggest causes of his loss. Aya looked at Snow, who was in Lan's arms. Lan fed her candies and they talked and laughed. Aya said. We have to revive Neos no matter what. He's the only one with the talent to lead Team Africa. I also believe he learned a lot after this loss. What do you think, Richard? Richard nodded quietly. He stroked his beard. It's still a question whether we can go back alive. Though it's good to have a goal we can work toward. Okay then. We will make reviving Neos as our goal. Didn't he say he want to take revenge on the person who forced him into this realm? It isn't his style to go out this way. That's it then. Once we get to the mummy, we will revive Neos. Both teams had finished their preparations. 10 hours passed. 10 more hours of flight before they reached Planet P, but the bugs had begun their attack. The first targets were the 10 small starships in the back. The space bugs' abdomens glowed when their distance was still quite far away. A fluorescent sphere formed inside the abdomens. Several seconds later, they spit out plasma balls about 2 to 3 meters in diameter. The plasma balls flew at the small starships. They had witnessed the power of the plasma balls during the first invasion. The balls were powerful, but an obvious weakness was their extremely slow speed. They may damage the fleet in a surprise attack, but they were otherwise not a big threat in space. No matter how powerful they were, they still needed to hit to be effective. The advantage of the smaller starships was their speed. They dodged the 5 wave of thousands of plasma balls easily. Several starships fired missiles back at a pack of space bugs. The explosions and fireballs burned these bugs to ashes. But the endless number of space bugs spit out their plasma balls again, one shot after another. The ball of flesh also opened up a large tube aimed at the small starships. Tens of thousands of plasma balls shot out from the tube. The staffs in the starships felt that they had nowhere to dodge. And in fact, they didn't have anywhere to dodge. The area was extremely spacious, but the fate of these 10 small starships had been decided when the plasma balls reached hundreds of thousands. Annihilated. All starships covering the retreat had been annihilated with one volley. No wonder. The scientists couldn't figure out how the bugs pushed meteorites toward Earth. This force is big enough to push the meteorites. Zheng, Xian, Kampa, Wangxia, and the remaining high-ranking officers discussed their next action in the command center of the flagship. One of the advisor described the situation they were facing. The space bugs' movement speed exceeded the fleet's speed in the current situation. The bugs' vanguard would reach planet P at the same time the fleet does. If there really were bugs waiting to block them off, the fleet might come under attack from multiple sides and get devoured by the plasma balls. Enlarge the plasma balls, then slow down the firing process. Xian thought for a moment, then said to one of the advisors. The advisor immediately headed over to the control panel. The wall in front of them turned transparent, then it displayed the scene of the bug's attack just then. The advisor controlled the screen to lock onto one of the firing bugs and enlarged at its mouth. Xian watched the firing process repeatedly for quite a while. He adjusted his glasses and said, "Not covered with any mucus. Announce the order throughout the fleet, all starships will land on planet P at the same time. Starships X3 to X7 move toward the bottom of the fleet. Fire missiles at any bugs that come within attack range." Xian gave out a series of commands and arranged the position of each starship. Zheng asked with curiosity, "Why are we landing? The bugs will only have to fire with plasma balls from space with this amount. We won't be able to dodge if we are on the ground. Aren't we going to die like this?" Xian answered him calmly. "It's not an issue. The plasma balls will quickly disappear through friction in the atmosphere. There's another kind of bug on the ground that spits plasma balls. Those bugs cover the plasma with mucus, which is what enables them to use the attack within the atmospheric layer. The temperature of space forbids the use of mucus on plasma balls. Without this mucus, the plasma balls can't enter the atmosphere. Which means our enemies are only the bugs on the ground and Team South America once we land." The fleet finally came near planet P on the second day after over 10 hours of flight. Hundreds of thousands of space bugs surrounded them from all sides. The bugs' attacks weren't strong. They only had plasma balls and their defense was fragile even against the Gatling cannons on the starships. A single starship could take on 1, 10, and even 100 of these bugs at once. Since what use were these powerful plasma balls if they couldn't hit? Though that was the case in skirmishes. Once the scale of battle grew to the size that they were facing now, the bugs obtained an incomparable advantage, their numbers. Perhaps 100 or 1,000 plasma balls would miss, but what if there were hundreds of thousands or even millions? The question at this time wasn't whether they could dodge but whether there would be anything left of them. Humans looked down on the arachnids. Everyone aside from a selected few considered them as simply insects with impressive reproductive ability. The military admitted they underestimated the bugs after the first loss on Klendathu, but they only believed it was due to a lack of preparation. Humans still believed the bugs were not a match, especially since 4 heroes turned the battle around. Their offensive powers, numbers, organization, and scheming showed that the bugs weren't a low-level species. The fact was, the arachnids were way beyond humans in terms of invasiveness and offensiveness. "Colonel, we must transmit the images back to Earth. The human race has come to a critical situation. All industries need to produce as we are in a war. 1 year, no, in just half a year we can have 10,000 starships. If the whole Earth starts producing, we will," an advisor said to Xian with passion. Xian took a bite from an apple. "Problem 1 is how many trained staffs are required for 10,000 starships? How many troopers will it take to fill? Can we gather all the people in half a year? Problem 2, will the bugs leave us half a year? Once our fleet gets annihilated, the Federation will be exposed to their attacks. The moment we lose our advantage in space, the bugs can attack Earth with meteorites or even transport swarms to the ground. Can humans fight them with just our bodies? Problem 3, how are we supposed to transmit these images?" The advisor had no reply. A lieutenant said, "There are high-powered transmitters in each of the fortresses on planet P. This is a technology that even we have no way of disrupting, so the bugs probably can't either. They transmit by using particles instead of electrical signals." Xian took another bite. "Correct. That's why we have to land on planet P. And in order to preserve our forces, all starships will land around the largest fortress, Blizzard. We will establish multiple layers of defense to prepare for the upcoming war after backups come. We have to hold here like a nail on the ground so that the bugs can't ignore us and head toward Earth. We might die with millions or even tens of millions of bugs coming at us. But our names will be written in history. Send the recording of my words to every starship. Tell them that they can either run and get killed by their own people or become a hero and return to Earth. Let them understand the situation and make their own choice." The advisors and officers saluted at Xian, then one headed toward the panels. Zheng walked over and asked in a low voice, "When did you learn to incite emotions?" Xian replied as a matter of fact. "Didn't you assess me as a person who sides himself with the majority? This is the first step to completing any big task. We have let them know that our fates are tied together. Now we just need to lay out the plans carefully and wait for God's announcement." 3 days left. At noon of the same day, the scouting fleet discovered a second massive ball of flesh floating behind planet P. It floated on the orbit of planet P like a satellite. As the fleet came near, tens of thousands of space bugs came out from the ball. Things happened as Xian had predicted. With the ambush ahead of them and more pursuing the back, their only choice was to land on planet P. The fleet began to descend. All players including Team China and Team Africa on the fleet received the same notification from God. Protect the 7 fortresses for 3 days. For every fortress that is lost, Deduct 1000 points from each member. For every fortress protected, reward 1000 points to each member. All members will be erased if all 7 fortresses fall. Everyone turned to Xian afterward, including the 2 from Team Africa. The fate of the 2 teams were tied together, so Team Africa naturally placed their hopes on Xian. Even though Zheng had a feeling Xian was planning something, like squeezing the last bit of use from Team Africa then finish them off. Xian asked Aya. Did Marnie and Rose leave before the military hire UPS came? And you haven't received notification of their deaths? Aya nodded. Yes. They told us briefly then left that same day. What's the problem? No, I just feel that God is devious. He exhaled. The initial mission was to survive until time's up. Logically, we just had to fly a starship into the vast nothingness of space. No one would be able to do anything to us and we will have the highest chance of surviving. But what if God announces this mission only 3 days before our time is over? There's probably over a 70% chance of getting erased. Everyone felt a chill down their spines as they followed his thoughts. God kept setting up one trap after another for them to step on. The more they try to run, the higher the risk becomes. Fortunately, both teams had their strategists and didn't make such a low-level mistake. The starship suddenly shook violently. It had begun to enter the atmosphere. They could see the outer layer of the starship turning red from the friction through the monitor screen. Several minutes later, the friction subsided and the yellow and dusty continent came into view. Xian looked at the screen then said to an advisor. Have the troopers get ready. Each sergeant leads a squad. Assign a lieutenant to every 10 squads and a major to every 10 lieutenants. Establish defense lines around the fleet. Send the order to every starship. All ships head toward Blizzard Fortress. The advisor saluted then ran over to the panel. Xian turned to Aya and Richard. We are leaving the defense to Blizzard Fortress to you too. Richard, you were a soldier, right? Led these troopers in the defense. The fortress is not allowed to fall. Can you do it? Richard nodded. These starships have powerful attacks and we have so many troopers. I have also seen the map of the fortress. Defending for 3 days should be an easy task. But if we are leading this army, what about you guys? You to be exact. Xian said to Zheng. The bigger the risk, the higher the reward. You will decide on the upcoming battle. There are 2 plans. 1, we lead an army in the small starships to go around and assist the other fortresses to guarantee the highest reward after 3 days. Blizzard Fortress will be protected to prevent us from getting erased in the worst case scenario. 2, abandon all other fortresses. Use Blizzard Fortress to lure the bugs while we hunt for Team South America and the Brain Bug. Human starships could move inside the atmosphere unlike the space bugs. The advanced motor system and streamlined design allowed the starships to fly 300 meters above the ground without any difficulty. However, the radars detected numerous plasma bugs in the distant plane. These bugs shot mucus-covered plasma balls that worked inside the atmosphere and could damage the starships. The pilots reported this possibility back to the flagship where Xian and several advisors were planning the formations of the army, such as the distribution of veterans, officers, and necessary heavy firearms. The backup that came from Earth also brought armored vehicles which manufacturers just rushed out. These were experimental versions, so there were only 100. The vehicles were equipped with only a Gatling cannon, though the Federation at least made some adjustment. Now, the lieutenants of each platoon were fighting for these vehicles. That's expected. The arachnids aren't without intelligence. Airspace between the outer atmosphere and the ground would become our free reign without their plasma bugs. They won't simply take the beating without countering. Don't go bother these plasma bugs. Hurry up and head toward Blizzard Fortress. Xian replied. Since the decision to head toward Blizzard Fortress had been made, the fleet only had to move at their fastest speed. Over 100 starships flew across the sky. Those gigantic bodies were astonishing. They were the height of human technology in this era, the biggest reliance against the arachnid. 2 hours later, the fleet of over 100 arrived on top of the fortress. It was built with metal and encompassed a huge area. The troopers in the fortress didn't know of the fleet's arrival beforehand due to the bugs disrupting the signals. When the fleet arrived, several hundred troopers ran over and more coming out from the inside. This is on a plane. The fortress is approximately 50 meters tall, but this height can't defend against the bugs' attacks. Xian muttered as he observed the area around the fortress. The advisors next to him all came with the backups. Their chief asked. But the whole fortress including its groundwork is built using the toughest alloy that exists on Earth. This alloy can withstand tactical nukes. How could they not defend against the bugs? Before Xian answered, Zheng said. Because the bugs won't break through the alloy from the front. They will pile 50 meters of dead bodies then walk over the fortress. Once they get in close range of us, we have to focus fire on them or get swarmed by the sea of bugs. You can go ask the veterans who survived. Rookie. The chief of advisors' face turned red, but he was convinced and saluted to Zheng, then looked down at the fortress with the others. The final decision was to leave 47 starships behind and surround the fortress in multiple layers. The troopers would shoot from the middle deck of the starships. Once the bugs drowned the starships, they would leave through the transport ships on the top floor and move into the next layer. The defense of this fortress would be incredible. The fleet descended. The advisors led the remaining starships to assist other fortresses. Xian and several advisors entered Blizzard Fortress to use its communication system to contact the Federation on Earth. Once all the troopers started following the plan, Xian finally found the opportunity to talk with Zheng. Have you decided? Xian had a red apple in his hand. He walked over to Zheng, who was leaning on the wall and smoking. Zheng frowned slightly. Can't you eat something else? It's always red apples every time I see you. Xian also frowned and pondered for a moment. Tomatoes next time then. The color looks pretty good also. Back to our topic. What do you think of my suggestions? One safe choice and one risky choice, and they determine what you should do and what you want to do in the future. Tell me. What is your choice? Zheng took a puff and smiled bitterly. The choice of my future? What choice in the future? We might have been wiped if it wasn't for your wits in this movie. Give me an advice. What does the choice determine the future? Xian said. With the safe choice we will defend in these 3 days. Since God gave a time limit of 3 days, there will definitely be a large amount of bugs, perhaps even more than what we encountered in Klendathu. However, with our defense plan and your explosion and destruction to kill the powerful bugs like the tanker bug, these 3 days shouldn't be difficult. It will allow us to live through this movie safely and protect your dear team members. We have a 70% chance of going back without casualty. Zheng was silent for a moment. And the second choice? We must stay here for 2 days and 2 nights. In the last 12 hours, we will strike out and annihilate Team South America. There's also a chance of killing or capturing the brain bug. In summary, the second choice is filled with danger. There's also a chance of getting wiped. Aside from you. However, the second choice is also filled with points and rewards. If we can make it through, your wish of reviving team members and closing the gap from Team Devil are possible. Zheng closed his eyes and pondered quietly. The faces of previous team members flashed across his mind. Everyone died in that battle against Team Devil. He was the only one who survived. He had recovered part of Team China's strength by now and began reviving the members. He suddenly felt lost. Make your choice. Either everyone returns to the real world safely in the future or walk a road of hardships, lead the team to grow strong, death to those who get eliminated, and the remaining fight with you in the revenge against Team Devil. Zheng threw the cigarette butt onto the ground and stepped on it. I have decided on the second road. We have gotten this far already. There's no going back to the safe road. Even if we can be safe this time, the future is likely going to present new dangers. Tell me the details of your plan. Oh. Xian asked with a slight surprise. I am curious. I think your personality will make you take the first choice. Why? Aren't you aware that the second choice will put us all in danger? Because of the feeling of impotence. Zheng leaned on the wall and watched the troopers transporting weapons and ammunition. He muttered. Ever since entering this realm, I have felt a feeling of impotence many times. Struggling to survive against the monsters. No power to choose the next movie. Inability to save my comrades. And I could hardly protect the one I love. It wasn't until I met my clone that he told me with his past what true helplessness feels like. He must be weeping blood from within. I felt as though I can hear his inner cries to kill him. Even though I didn't experience that event, but just imagining it and being unable to do anything, I don't ever want it to happen. And as my comrades, you need to grow strong with me until we can protect ourselves and the people around us. We have to obtain this power. You said that the greater the danger, the higher the reward. It's the time we head straight for this danger. Xian took a bite off the apple and said. Understood. Then leave everything to me. The arachnids' attack began before dusk of the same day.